Hi and welcome to this Big Picture weekly webinar. My name is Mark and I will be hosting this week's session. Before we start, a couple of organizational notes. So the first part is around 1 hour. We will have a Q&A afterwards, so you can use the chat box and ask questions or simply join our discussion afterward. And the first part is also split into two. Actually, we'll start with a quick overview of different big picture modules, and then we'll go into more details. And what you see right now on the screen is our wiki pages with references to our documentation, so wiki.softwareplant.com, a list of our products starting with BigPicture, which is the flagship product. The main product is a project portfolio management suite for Jira. Works with Agile and waterfall mixed methodologies. You can combine those easily. It has an extension to BigPicture called BigPicture Enterprise. Adds some large-scale features for large companies. Big Gantt, which is a standalone Gantt module. Big template with main functionality to export issue detail information to previously stylized electronic documents, or together with BigPicture or Big Gantt to import and export to and from external platforms, and role extensions, customized roles for Jira components. So all those plugins are available to Jira Server, Jira Cloud, and Jira Data Center users. We'll start with the Program Manager, which is the main module and actually the first view you will see when you install our app. So what you see right now is the list of previously created programs. Let me explain what the concept of a program is. So actually a program by definition consists of correlated projects. In case of BigPicture, in case of Big Gantt, they do not have to be correlated. Actually, a program can represent a single project, any number of projects, or in other words, creating a portfolio overview. It can be a functional program simulating an agile release train, or for example, a risk register, like in my case. And there's actually no limitations on what you can add to the scope of the program, meaning that you can have projects, different type of projects, software, traditional projects, business projects combined in one program. Now, there are a couple of view options, including the list view. And we are redesigning this module currently, so soon you'll be able to actually structure the list of your programs. But I will show you how to already do that using the available modules. There's also a Gantt-like view which allows you to edit the start and end dates using drag and drop. The programs are color-coded, representing their status, as well as the timeline, which is dynamic, and adjust the timeline to squeeze in all your programs. Now, each program has some information that you can display in different views, and they are grouped into columns. Each column represents a different status. The difference here is that the closed programs do not get synchronized once they are opened. Now, there are some basic tools here, but before I explain that, maybe let's go over the basic program data. So you have the program name, you have the start and end dates. Right now, those dates do not impact any Jira start and end dates, any Jira issues, no any schedules within the program. Right now, they're totally independent. This was different in the past when those actually did impact the Agile schedule. Right now, this is no longer the case. It will be redesigned, however, once we release the new module. Other than that, we have some additional program information. We have the program leader who has access to the program configuration. By default, we have links to different big picture modules to to the program configuration, and we have a program icon with a progress bar here. This progress bar shows us the time passed since the start date of the program. So here, as you can see, we are way past the end date of the program, hence you could say that it's an expected progress, or this program is already completed. Now, you can sort by the dates, by the names, by the leaders. You can filter out unwanted information, unwanted programs. For example, I can filter out my favorite, my programs, or my favorite programs, my and favorite. Also, new, filter by status, or filter by initial permissions, filter by dates, or simply use the search box. Now, to start working with BigPicture, I clicked on the add new program, and there are 4 options I can use to actually create my first program. I do recommend using the evaluate with sample data option. Why? Because it adds a set of tasks that you can play with and learn, understand how the tool works. Very useful feature. Other than that, we can also create new programs from scratch, or if you already have your favorite program configuration, you can apply this configuration and simply save time. If we click next, we'll be required to enter this basic program data that I already mentioned. The initial permissions also, you have set of hundreds of icons to select from and organize your programs as you like. The most important here, I would say, is the scope of step 3, scope of data, where we decide which Jira issues will be pulled in or synchronized with BigPicture or Gantt. You can define the scope by selecting from the previously created Jira boards, or use previously saved JQL filters, or simply select from the list of projects. As you can see, as I keep adding items, the number of issues within the scope increases, indicating that there is an OR gate here and here, while I can narrow the scope to a particular issue type. For example, issue type equal epic. Let's see if we have any epics here. Yes, we do have 54, so I can use these extra filtering conditions to narrow the scope of my program. And while we are actually in the program configuration already, don't worry about this. You can change that at any phase of the program's life cycle. Now I can create a new project together with my program. This, in case of Jira Server, the project presets can be configured in the global configuration of the app. Now there are some more steps here. Some are pretty basic, meaning you can hide different BigPicture modules if you do not plan on using them. There's this one difference between BigPicture Cloud and BigPicture Server. Mainly, the cloud version does not have the old version of the board available. In case of BigPicture Server, we can select select which board we would like to use with our program. However, we will not be able to switch from one to the other once the program is created. So if you want, you can use both, but you cannot switch from one to the other once you already create a program. Now, there are some more advanced settings as well. I will not get into details here. We will talk more about the Agile schedule as well as the board configuration later. As we will start with the Gantt and resources, I do recommend starting with the manual task mode. If you want a quick start, you can use the data presets, but you can always configure your view however you'd like once the program is created. Other than that, what are the remaining options? Is you can clone existing programs. This is again a very useful feature which allows you to actually, once you have your program created, configured, and you would like to create a template based on it, you can do that by cloning this program. And templates are by definition generic, so we do not clone all the information like, for example, you might have cloned issues in Jira. We rather copy the high-level generic information about your program so that you can start reuse it with your future work. We do clone program. We apply the clone programs configuration as well as clone issues, and you can link them using a cloning, for example, to their source data. Other than that, we can also import and import data from a file. This requires big template plugin. As explained in the beginning, we can structure our data based on epics, or in other words, the parent issue within the structure would be the issue type epic, or simply structure based on tags, which will use the default issue type for all of your tasks here. Now, different file types are supported. However, keep in mind that importing does not import all the fields. It's limited to the start and end date, the hierarchy, the structure, the links, and the summary field. Requires a big template plugin. All right, so let's open one of those programs. I will use the hybrid program, and I will be redirected to the first available module, which in my case is the Gantt module. And there it is. As you can see, I do have it already configured. I do have it structured into phases. So let's go over the interface of this Gantt module. We have the customizable list of issues, including the task hierarchy or the work breakdown structure. We have the timeline with my tasks generated. So using drag and drop, I can change the duration. I can define or create or delete dependency links. I can, as you can see, there are some automation features. So the successor was moved based on the type of link used. So the gray bars here represent my parents, resulting from the hierarchy here, and the footprints here, the phantom objects, represent my project baselines. So the initial position of the tasks at the moment of creating the project. I also have a slider here which I can use to manually update the progress. It's actually currently mapped to the time tracking field, and as you can see here, I'm actually changing, updating the end date field in Jira. So this is very important. Actually, let me go to the program to the global plugin configuration to explain what is the mapping, what are the mapping of the fields possible options. So let's go to the Jira administration add-ons, and in the BigPicture technical configuration, you'll have the different sections, but by far the most important is the task configuration, where you can actually define which fields will be used and updated when doing operations on your tasks. Now, this first of all is a configuration. This configuration is per project, so I can have within a single program, I can have multiple different projects with different mapping. This, of course, has a downside. You will not be able to aggregate all those all the information, or you'll be required to compare dates to to know data. So keep that in mind. There are three different options here. We can actually disable the synchronization. We can use date picker or date time type of fields, or select from time tracking fields. So we also have here the original estimate and time spent plus remaining estimate, which is more accurate as relies on the remaining estimate field instead of the OE original estimate. Now, as you could already see, I have my progress field mapped to time tracking. I can use my custom progress fields here. I do not have to actually time track my tasks. I also have a dedicated field to map my baselines, and there are some more advanced options. For example, in case of the project communication, very important in Jira, we can save changes made to tasks as comments, or we can also send notifications to inform users about changes to the task that they are watching or they are assigned to. Now, there are some more advanced options here. Calculate tasks automatically based on assignees' working days. So I'll demonstrate that, but it actually takes into account the individual calendars of my resources, of my assignees, and helps me and adjust the task duration to take into account, and not the task duration, task start position, start and end dates, to take into account the non-working days of the individual resources. Now, there are other options here. I will not get into too many details, but the same applies to dependencies. So I can actually map 4 types of links for the standard Gantt kind of standard for the Gantt chart. I can map, of course, any other link available in Jira, but also separate link for my boards. This will be this is something that we are also redesigning, so you'll have more links available for the board module. There are also some widgets that I will talk about later, and since we are here, maybe let's talk a bit about the security or actually permission settings. So we have the permissions for everyone, or the default roles. Once the default roles are selected, you'll be able to define 5 types of roles. Administrator has access to every section of the plugin, including the business administration. We have the program admin, which global program admin, who has access to the program configuration, and program creators simply can create programs. Editors can edit the data within the programs, and global users can have read-only access to the program. Now, going back to our Gantt, as I already presented, those are actually the individual non-working days. So as you can see, they are shaded out gray, and the plugin will help you and prevent you from scheduling a task on a non-working day. So it will be either move to the left or move to the right accordingly to take into account the non-working days of the individual assignee in that case. Okay, so let's go over different BigPicture, big Gantt and Gantt features. So we have the program picker here, links to different BigPicture modules. We have the avatar of all the online users. So the app can show you that somebody else is working on your program currently. Very useful feature. We can actually add tasks using this interface. So there is the add plus task button. There are 2 types of tasks that we can add: Jira tasks and subtasks, as well as artificial tasks. So what is the concept of an artificial task? Let me add such a task to the list, and I will do a simple use case to show you how we can use the artificial task to actually group my
projects together. So I will, using keyboard shortcuts, let me demonstrate that. I pressed Shift plus question mark. I have shortcuts which I really like using, especially navigating through the list of issues here, using Shift and arrows here. So I move this artificial task all the way to the top here, and as you can see right now, there it is. Actually, this is also a good example of how the issues are added to the program in case there are no time estimates nor dates are set. In that case, you will end up with a list of issues starting on the current date. Today is the 2nd of January 2020, and the 1 day duration. So this is what would happen if no original estimate, no start and end dates are set. We will use the creation date, and the task will have a 1 day duration. It's not the case in case of the artificial tasks, because there are not Jira issues, so they do not have all those fields that are strictly reserved for Jira issues. And you cannot convert from artificial task to Jira issue, at least yet. So other than that, I can add issues directly using this interface. There are a couple of rules when adding. For example, we can use the original estimate to calculate the end date, and this is a very useful feature. We can actually add multiple artificial tasks. So, for example, create project phases using a artificial task template. We can group our tasks, organize our tasks, or in other words, sort or group our tasks. The sorting and grouping fields criteria available will depend on what you add here as the columns. Okay, so let me jump a little here to the columns views. If I change now to a different columns view, meaning different fields will be displayed as columns, now my grouping and sorting criteria also includes those fields. I will show you how to change those, customize this column view a bit later. But before we do that, let's go over the remaining features here. I will revert to the basic view, as I would like to have my assignee and the status. So I can actually multi-level group my data. The order here is important, and not only group but also count the number of issues in these different groups. So as you can see here, I have 6 issues with the done status, while within this group 1 is assigned to Jerome and 5 are assigned to Angela. So the concept here, the same concept, is actually used by the reports module. So let's jump also a little ahead to the reports module. And as you can see here, I have a visual layer that works exactly the same way. I have the status per assignee. Now if I click on it, I can see exactly the same data, but in form of a pie chart. Now there are 2 types of charts we can use: pie charts, bar charts, and kind of like a tree view, okay, or what we just seen using the Gantt module. This BigPicture standard version includes all those 5 charts. Okay, they're not customizable, but using BigPicture Enterprise, you can actually customize the grid, add as many charts as you'd like, and edit those such that the formulas and group by fields up to 5, those are drill down charts, so up to 5 levels, 5 group by levels are available, and you can also actually use the auto refresh to make sure that your reporting dashboard is always up to date. Okay, so let's go back to our Gantt chart, disable the grouping criteria. Okay, so we can also expand, collapse all. Let's collapse all, and I will show you also how to actually create a portfolio overview using the same program in a bit. I already mentioned the baselines, so you can create them and show them. I did not mention the task mode, so there are different task modes available. Auto mode and manual mode in general. In case of the auto task modes, auto modes, there is the top down and bottom up. Right now we are using top down, which means that if I start adding, let me identify where my first task is here. Let's say expect. If I move this task, you will see that the successor is moved accordingly, and the parent task is recalculated. Now, if I switch to manual mode, this will no longer be the case. So I'll do the same operation, and as you can see that the successor remains at its position, while the parent gray bar switched color to yellow. This yellow extended bar indicates the position after it is recalculated. So I know what to expect when I revert to the auto mode in my case. Other than that, we can use the lock mode to prevent users from updating the tasks using drag and drop here. In case of problems, you can also resynchronize. However, this option is available to administrators only. Now, there are already mentioned column views, so I can switch between different column views and customize them as well. I can change the layout options, squeeze in more data. I can show the task structure, the markers. There are two types of markers, the purple and blue, you could say, to indicate an important date. Or the current date using the purple marker. I can also color by status, or actually use custom colors for my tasks, so I can color them using this color palette. And actually here, if you click on this last column here, I can change those settings per task, unlike in that case where it applies to it's a bulk operation. Now, I can also enable the Jira detailed view and open the issue detailed view and replace the timeline with the issue detailed view and edit my tasks directly from here. Or I can actually double click on my tasks to show this edit dialog. All the operations are synchronized with Jira bidirectionally, and this is actually live. So whenever I drag and drop a task, this will be immediately. Operation will immediately update my issue in Jira. Now, there is also the resources panel, which shows me the resource utilization using color-coded boxes here. The threshold is set to 75% and 100%. I will talk about resources later when we switch to the resources module. We can also export data using big template, export to CSV files, to images, to Microsoft Excel or Microsoft Project is supported. Now, I can also adjust the scale, and why this is quite self-explanatory, this will also change the aggregations of my resources panel. So I can switch from daily, weekly to monthly aggregations. Other than that, I also have a very useful feature called quick filters. So I can set my JQLs and filter out all the unwanted information. As you can see, the parents here still remains on the list, but it is kind of transparent to show that it does not fit the query here. I can mark my filters as favorite. Also, I can filter by dates, and this is especially useful when you export to an image. You do not want to export this blank area, so you can simply filter that out. There are some more very useful features here. It's not a simple search box. You can also actually switch to JQL, and it's a fully functional Jira query language box, or in other words, additional filter. And I can also switch to a presentation mode to hide the headers, both of Jira and also of the app. Next, we will do a simple use case. So let's go to the program configuration, and I will add a couple of projects, 2 projects to my program, so that it can be used to actually simulate my small portfolio consisting of 3 projects altogether. And in the program configuration, which we are currently in, we already covered the basics, the modules section. You can deactivate different BigPicture modules. You can also change the scope definition, and as you can see, I have 1 hybrid project within the scope. So let me add 2 more sample data projects. Now the number of issues within the scope increased to almost 150. If I save and go back to the Gantt chart, you will see that I already have 3 of those projects within the scope. All right, so let's see if I collapse here. There we go. So as you can see, I have 3 and my artificial tasks. So I can actually use my artificial task to group my projects together and get an overview of all those, aggregate all those data, roll up all those data to this artificial task level. So I can do that using the arrows here, or I can actually do that using drag and drop as well. Other than that, in the program configuration, there's the synchronization section, which is very important and will allow me to structure my tasks automatically. I can not only structure my tasks, but I can also add to my issue list task fields that such as versions, components, and projects and sprints and backlog, so I can visualize this information as tasks on the Gantt and in other BigPicture modules, including the scope, including the board's backlog. Now, whenever I check those boxes, the versions, the version field, the components, the projects will get synchronized with Jira or with other programs. So not all of those items have dates within Jira. For example, projects that might have some system dates not visible to users, but definitely the sprints and versions do have dates, and they will be synchronized with Jira, while the remaining ones will be synchronized with other BigPicture programs. And here we also have the automated task structure. So here is how we generate the hierarchy of my tasks, and I do have some of them enabled already. I don't need that one duplicate. There are in general 2 types built in, such as the projects epic, subtasks, versions, components, parent link, which is a portfolio system link, which is used to actually structure by the portfolio app. We have the sprints, and all the other remaining are linked based. So I can also use a link, and I have a dedicated link called parent, child, or feature story. I have dedicated links to structure my my tasks Here, this is actually quite complicated. So the sequence, the order, the sequence is important. It might result in different hierarchy. It is all described in our documentation, so I do recommend checking that out. One warning: do not activate all of those. Once they are enabled, there is validation that will prevent you from modifying this hierarchy such that it conflicts the active structure builders. One more thing about the Gantt chart: we can save the columns views, save our favorite views, add from the list of Jira fields, add those fields as columns, and also set aggregation and display options here. So those would vary depending on the field type, but keep that in mind. We will talk more about it when talking about the scope module in just a minute. So next is the scope module, and this is actually the redesigned list of tasks that we already talked about. It actually resembles the exact structure that we created previously. Okay, so I can expand this. I can actually do much more here, and the major difference is that I don't have the timeline compared to the Gantt chart, so this module is preferred by the Agile teams, although you can use the Gantt for road mapping and to create a nice overview, just as I presented here, by simply structuring by projects. We don't have to necessarily structure by project, maybe by epics is enough. But what we can do here is change the fields presented as columns directly without the necessity to do that by going to the program configuration. So what's really cool is I can add the same field multiple times, and let's do that with story points. So I actually have 3 columns of story points already, and I can set different aggregations for each of those columns. Okay, so those are actually, let's expand here. Story points are actually number fields which I can update directly using this interface. I can also change the display options as well as the aggregations, and I do have different aggregations set here. So starting with the sum, I can show the minimum, the maximum value. Sum, ignore the parents. I can compare my initial estimates at the high level. So for example, if I do estimate a project phase or a feature first, and then the teams breaks it down into stories, so I can compare the initial estimation and then the derived estimation based on what the team has done, by simply adding the same field with different aggregation settings as columns. What is really interesting here are especially the status base here. This is already a metric, and very useful metric, so I did select it here twice. Let's use one. Number of story points in different status categories, or number of story points in different status categories expressed in percentage as points. So the story point distribution, in other words. Okay, other than that, what's very useful in this particular module is that I can actually multi-select my tasks, okay, and using drag and drop structure them manually. I also mentioned that while I can do structure my quite freely, there are some limitations, and whenever the structure builders are enabled, so I will not be able to drag one item that is a part of one project and nest it under the other whenever the project structure builder is enabled. So the app will make sure that the conflicts do not occur. Of course, if you want to manually structure your tasks, make sure that or do some manual adjustments, make sure they do not conflict the active structure builders. Okay, so besides that, we can also export to CSV files as well as to Microsoft export, Microsoft Excel. We can change the view here, add the detailed view, just like in case of the Gantt chart, and edit our tasks directly here. This, however, is not yet available to Jira Cloud users. We can also sort our tasks by different fields added as columns. Alright, so next is the board and roadmap module. So we actually have two boards that are that use the same concept of the Agile schedule. Agile schedule is made of program increments, which then consist of iterations. And maybe let's go to the program configuration to show you that you can generate an Agile schedule when creating a program in the advanced section of the program wizard. And my sample Agile schedule right here consists actually of 3 iterations each. Now I can generate it automatically, or I can add my iterations and program increments one by one. Now this is the basis. This is how actually my board will be organized. Okay, so we'll start with the high-level board called roadmap. Now on this board you can set your objectives and goals, what you want to accomplish in those time boxes, and objectives and goals should be understood by both the business and the technical people. And an objective, of course, the completion of the objective may depend on various teams. Hence, what we can do here is we can actually nest the team level objectives to these generic objectives. We can also here drill down to the iteration level and do the same thing accordingly at the iterations. So for each of the iterations. So here, what does this module consist of? We have a timeline where we can add we can add an important milestone such as release or other important events. We can track our objectives, change their status to open, completed, failed, abandoned. Abandoned objectives will not be transferred to the next time box, next PI, next program increment in my case. We can also set the planned business value and when the data is available, compare it to the actual business value. Now, the app can calculate the ratio between those two. If you click view achievements and count by business value, you will see the comparison. So let's try that. If I type 5, for example, this is a number field ranging from 1 till 10, so it's 200% gain, a simple calculation. Now, we can also, what you see here is actually the teams. So each swim lane is represented by a team, and I can add 2 types of objectives. Ones are kind of like artificial tasks of the Gantt module, which cannot be accessed or viewed using Jira, but I can also switch to Jira issues, and I did create an objective issue type. So let's try one such type of an smart objective. Reduce the number of incidents by X% so that teams have more time for innovation. So I can add such an objective. I can change its status, but this status does not synchronize with Jira. This is because during the system demo, such objectives should be reviewed, and it's always a good idea to have a double check. Now, when we know what we want to accomplish in those time boxes in our iterations and in our program increments and
maybe also in our iterations, it's time to actually do some planning. So for that purpose, we can use the board module. The board is actually a program increment dependency board. When we can start planning both at the program increment level, and teams can also plan their iterations accordingly. So now let's go over this interface real quick. So again, we have the timeline. Again, it's built based on the our Agile schedule. We have the program increments, we have the iterations, we have a backlog. We can hide this backlog, side backlog, and this actually also this backlog also includes the structure, just like the scope module, just like the Gantt module. It's customizable. We can inline edit our fields here. I have it configured to for my PI planning, so it has the WSJF wait share this jobs first field that I added, and I can actually customize it just like any other list. So it's kind of using the aggregations. I can define some metrics that I'll be using to track progress. Okay, and this is not the only place where I can keep track of my progress. I can also do this directly using the board. So first of all, using drag and drop, I can add my items and plan them in those different time boxes. As you can see here, I also have some progress bars here. Actually, there are two types of progress bars. Let me change that. Totals. This is what we refer to as totals, and there are two types: capacity allocation and work progress. Now, both of those time boxes are very useful. The first one at the planning stage, the second one at the execution phase, when we actually monitor the progress, but the capacity shows us the number of planned story points. Actually, it works in different units: story points, original estimates, or remaining estimates if you use time tracking, and we can compare the planned versus the capacity. So I already mentioned, I think I already mentioned, if not the capacity. So we will talk more about it when discussing the resources module and big picture administration. Now, what else can we do here? We can create dependency links using drag and drop. I see that. Okay, yeah, let's adjust the screen here. Using drag and drop, I can connect my cards here. I can also, okay, these are inline editable fields, so I can edit them directly here. I can customize my cards. I can collapse all the teams and only see the capacities or the progress of all of my teams, and I can also drill down to the iteration level where I have my stories. So how does this work? We do have a published white paper on PI planning using Skate Agile framework. So in general, we will start with a backlog full of features, and we will start planning our features, for example, using the way shortest job first as a criterion to select those who would bring the most value and would require a least effort. Now, from there, we start planning our features. We can define the dependencies. Between those tasks, there are color-coded, so again, you will be able to see any conflicts in case you change you change your plans. Now, then the teams break down the features into stories, and they do the same. They plan their work using in iterations, and the iterations can be synchronized with Jira. So each iteration can actually be synchronized to different fields in Jira. So not only sprints, we support other fields, number fields, as well as single choice list, if I remember correctly. this works in 3 different modes, so we can disable the synchronization, and it applies to both the program increment level as well as the iteration level. We can disable the synchronization, we can select the shared synchronization or team specific. Now, team specific means in general that each of your teams will be using their own separate board, while shared board means that you will share a master board, while because we introduced the concept of teams, and teams are actually saved as a label or as a, again, single single list choice, then you will be able to filter, your teams will be able to filter out the unwanted information and make sure that only those tasks that are assigned to their team are found on their board. So you'll end up with a master board, and each team can have a dedicated board, while in the team specific mode, each team can use their own totally independent board. All right, so the synchronization is again at the program, both at the program increment level as well as the iteration level. Now, what else can we do here is we can generate reports. Okay, we can auto-generate reports. If you click on this reports button, you'll have a quite an advanced reports settings. So 2 types of charts. Okay, pie charts, bar charts. You can select the data source, the tasks, or the capacities, and group, just like in the reports module, group by assignee, by priority, by status categories, and change the units from tasks to story points or to time tracking fields. Now, there are other features that we will not go into in much detail, but you can show the full scope, or in other words, that backlog here is dynamic. So once you start planning here, you first plan at the program increment level, then once an issue is planned in iteration, it will disappear from this view, but you can again show the full scope and show all the stories here accordingly. Also, we can do the capacity planning, and I will talk about the resources in general, but and the business big picture administration, and how those values are derived. But here we can override the capacities. If we drill down to iteration level here, we can actually override the initial default value, the default capacities. Okay, so I can update this field and highlight the changes. This, of course, will I can do that at the team level or at the individual level. I can highlight the changes, so you'll see that the total capacity was changed, and I can work with story points or man days in that case. All right, and there is one more feature I think I wanted to mention. Yeah, the task card layout. So I can change the layout of my card, just like in case of the risk cards. I can add, just like in case of the list, I can add different fields here. Okay, and design my own card layout. Okay, so the last module here would be the risks, and then we'll talk more about the teams and resources. So risks is a simple yet powerful module. Okay, so it has a matrix and a risk register, and I do have a dedicated program for that called risk register. So let's switch to that program real quick. Okay, so first of all, it's customizable again, so I can change. It uses 2 custom fields, risk probability and risk consequence. By default, you can map it to different fields if you want. However, keep in mind that the requirement for your issues, whatever their issue type is to have those 2 fields added to your issue screens and populate those with values. Otherwise, your issue will not appear nor on this risk matrix nor on this risk register. Now, this module list is a bit different than compared to what you've seen already, simply because we can its purpose is different. So we can inline edit those fields
in the edit mode. Okay, we can change those values using drag and drop as well. All right, we can also change the risk owner or the assignee in that case. Okay, so that's a very useful feature. Now, if we switch to the full view, you'll see that complete card. Using drag and drop, I can navigate, change the X and Y values. I can change the description. I can change the select options and the dimensions of the matrix as well. So by right now it's 5 times 5, but we can actually by deleting those select options, the dimensions of the matrix will also change. The cards are color coded to indicate the level of risk. So you'll see that they're red, orange, yellow, and green. And in order to mitigate the unacceptable risk level, you'd be required to actually, I would recommend linking it to mitigation means linking your risks to the originating action, and to show traceability, and of course assign it, and whenever your risk level is unacceptable, reduces to the acceptable level. You can still use the quick filters just like in any other modules. You can export the metrics to an image. You can export the risk register to an Excel document. You can sort by those fields, and actually here you can sort by simply clicking on the header. On the header, we can also transpose or invert the X and Y axis and add risks directly using this interface. Now, our risks module as well as the Gantt modules have gadgets, as well as the program manager have gadgets which you can add to your Jira or Confluence, Jira dashboards or Confluence pages to create an overview and present the data using a dashboard. So selected data, for example, highlight the risks, use filters in general to highlight the maybe the unmitigated risks. Show an extract of the timeline here. This is read only, so users can view it but won't be able to modify it. Let me adjust this view here. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, there we go. And yeah, so I think we did not address two topics still. Let's go to the business administration, where we can actually manage our resources, and this is very important. It applies to the Gantt module as well as the resources module. We have the resource manager. To access this section, you need admin permissions, admin security settings of the plugin. Now, there are a couple of tabs here. I will not go into all the details here, but starting with the resource manager, as you can see, each resource is assigned to a workload plan, is assigned to a holiday plan, and has a set of skill, and has also current absence box here. So we can define the start and end dates of the skill set that the resource has, so we can plan the skill development over time. We can assign it to workload and holiday plans. A lot of our customers use Jira dummy accounts to simulate their non-human resources. So this efficiency box can come handy. Again, you can plan the seasonal. You can have seasonal plans for your resources usage. So start and end dates, assign them to different plans. They can have different plans over time. Same applies to holiday plans, and while the workload plans are the basis for the capacity calculations, the holiday plans, by defining the non-working days, reduce the capacity. Same as the absence days, which reduce the capacity when we look at our resources in the weekly and monthly view. Now, our resources can be organized into teams. Okay, so this is a concept that is not available in Jira. However, there are other plugins that utilize the same concept. For example, Tempo. So if you have Tempo apps, you're already familiar with teams. Using BigPicture Enterprise, you can synchronize with Tempo, and creating teams will take less than a minute. Now, you can synchronize not only the teams, but also their workload plans, holiday plans, and the skill set. Each team consists of team members. Okay, so the memberships again have start and end dates, and you can allocate a portion of your resources time to different teams. This will impact the team's capacity as well as the availability on each given day. Yeah, so that time this will impact the daily and weekly, monthly capacity. In other words, the teams are stored by the app. Or can be synchronized with Jira. In that case, we will use a label field, and those labels can be generated automatically, or we will use a single list choice field. In that case, you need to predefine the answers. Now, the teams can be also you can actually select a board that the team will be using, and this is particularly important when you'll be auto-configuring your board and roadmap modules, actually the board module in particular. Now, there are also the workload plans. Okay, so again, I said 8 hours. Let's maybe edit this. Set 8-hour working day on Friday, 8-hour working days. Let's make a full week, whole week. Okay, working week. All right, and this is the basis for our capacity calculation. Now it will be reduced by the holiday plans. Holiday plans define the non-working days. So as you can see here, I have the non-working days set as weekends. I can also add fixed and floating holidays. The difference is that the floating holidays will not be moved to the next year as their dates vary. We can also define a set of skills that our resources have, and we can convert the time units into story points. Now, this information is used by our resources module, by our resources panel in Gantt module, and by our board module. Right, so the last module is the resources, and this is kind of an extension to the Gantt chart, but the information is presented in a bit different way. You're on the left hand side, just like in the resources panel, you have your list of resources, your list of assignees. Using drag and drop, I can reassign tasks between those resources. I can also level my resources. Using drag and drop, I can change the duration of my tasks. And I think that would be the task with an estimate. So you see here that there is a red frame around some of those tasks that indicates that there might be a problem. There's either some data missing, lack of estimates, or maybe there are assigned to assignees, both an individual, and the task is assigned to both individual and team, but Dustin or Aline can not be a member of the team that the task is assigned to. And actually, speaking of teams, so there are two views available, individual and team-centric view, where we can, again, using drag and drop, reassign tasks between teams. Now, there are some inbuilt additional filters, both in individual and teams view, so you can narrow the list of resources to team members, to particular team members only. Other than that, we also have the skill panel. So skills are defined at the issue level, and this way allow us to calculate the skill demand. Okay, now each resource has a set of skill, and proportionally, for example, in this case we have 3 skills, so a third of his time will be is attributed to this particular skill. Third of his availability of the time that he's available on any given time frame. Now there are three effort modes, so it's original estimate, remaining estimates, as well as story points, which is missing in the resources Gantt panel. We, as I explained earlier, we can convert time units into story points. We can also present different information here, so let's go over the numbers here. Maybe let's adjust the scale. First, let's switch to daily aggregation, so it will be easier to understand how does that work. And there we go. Okay, so we have the let's find a task that that has an estimate. There we go. Okay, and let's assign it to big demo here. So okay, so let's assign it to big demo here. This task probably is has a dependency. That's why it was moved. As you can see, it jumped from one window to the other. Let's try to confirm that. Okay, so as you can see here, let's do this one more time. Okay, so let's assign this to big demo here. Demo. Okay, and now as you can see, if I click on this task, you'll see that it has a 2-week original estimate, and this 2 weeks is evenly distributed over the 2-day duration. So it's 40 hours on each day. Now, using drag and drop, I can level my resources. You'll see that the color code changed to yellow, indicating that my capacity on any given day is 8 hours. The remaining capacity here is 0, as I allocated already 8 hours. Now, if I exceed the capacity, if my task is over allocated, it will be indicated with the red color. Now, I can look at this data using different aggregations, daily, weekly. So I might have a problem in this particular week, but then again, if I switch to a monthly view, you'll see that it's all green, so I did not exceed the monthly capacity. Very useful feature. Also, keep in mind that the values that you will see here will be different using the individual view as well as the Teams view. Also, if you would like to do some further analysis of your data, you can export it to images or export it to Excel, and then all the numbers that you see here will be exported. You can further analyze it. Okay, and I think so. Couple of more features here, and the one very important feature that I already mentioned before, but first of all, you can actually click on the capacity here, remaining capacity, or the allocation, to see how each task contributes to this calculated value. And also, if you click on the task, you will see the warnings, already mentioned warnings, and you'll see this find perfect match icon next to the assignee, and the plugin will help you finding the best individual or team that is available in that time frame, as well as has the appropriate skill. So here my Angela is my admin, is my champion, and all the others also are candidates that have time and maybe not all the skills acquired. All right, so thank you for your attention, and we will now have a short break, and we'll start a Q&A session. You can use the chat box to ask questions or join our discussion after the break.